Welcome to Enterprise Services Client Briefing Centre. One of the strategic priorities for the company is going to be leading clients on that journey through digital transformation. It's quite a process. Jeff Smith's going to kick off first. And tell us then, Jeff, if you would, about leading clients on that digital transformation journey.
Sure. Thanks, Paula. I think there are three things that we try to help clients understand that are truths relating to digital. The first is that the customer has already transformed digitally. Whether we saw it or not, the customer has already made the move. People behave differently, they use technology differently, their purchase decisions are made and executed differently because they are digitally enabled. And that is a fact that spans all industries. Second fact is that because customers have made that change, there are companies now who successfully tap that type of purchase behavior. And they are companies that traditional operators don't recognize as competition. We call that asymmetric competition because they're coming in from outside the boundaries. These are companies you don't expect, may not even see, and yet the evidence is there when spend and your share of market and share of wallet declines with this customer segment you've always enjoyed because they're spending it with somebody else, but you don't know who it is. The final fact is that the companies that are succeeding with digital transformation are companies who have successfully shed assets. They become asset-light businesses, but they retain control over the value delivery process to the customer using technology. And the result is a higher return on invested capital, a better EVA, and ultimately a higher market valuation for their business than if they were not operating that way. Those three things are facts. They're facts that affect every single vertical industry that we serve. What we see companies doing about it is one or more of four things. The first is they are stepping up to the digital customer experience because the customer has already transformed. They're trying to figure that out and connect to the customer in a way a customer will operate today. The second thing they're doing, which is a natural extension of a lot of things we've tried to do in the past with automation, is digitize business processes. In fact, much of what you see people actually spending money on today that they're calling digital is really more around the next generation of process automation, or if they're really enlightened, they're actually eliminating and simplifying processes first and then automating what remains. The third thing, which is the most interesting, probably the most risky and difficult, and yet potentially the most rewarding, is business model innovation, where literally companies are changing the nature of their company. In some cases, splitting off or carving off businesses to become digital versus asset intensive. In other cases, recognizing that they need a new front end to the customer and the customer purchase process from the way they've always tried to engage. And that business model innovation takes many forms, but we've got clients here in Europe right now who, among others, have literally IPO'd a new business that is called their downstream digital business, separate from their asset-intensive traditional operation. All three of those actions really depend on a digital capability, a platform. And so building that platform is the fourth thing in order to enable one or more of the three things that we see everybody doing. And if you put the three facts across the top of a matrix and four things you could do down the side, that's a way to initiate a practical way to talk about what you want to do with digital.
But if you take in a customer example like E.ON that you were telling me yesterday, there is the curveball. There's the thing you're not expecting.
Right.
Tell us more about what happened with E.ON.
E.ON came to the conclusion some time ago that digital for them meant to change their business. They needed to get the asset-intensive operational side, the nuclear power plants, the coal-fired plants, the transmission distribution trucks, move them into a separate company now called Uniper, which has a separate listed stock, from what they're referring to internally as the downstream digital business, which is a technology-heavy, asset-light company that is relying heavily on the connectivity of 26 million smart meters into homes and businesses as a channel to sell other services. Now, we take internet or telephony or cable television or Netflix or consumer groceries delivered at home. The meters, which first generation can't do all that stuff, but second generation can enable it because they're computers attached to your house, offer an entry point that the telephone companies and the cable TV companies have really not considered.
So sorry to interject here, but we're specifically talking here about smart meters, aren't we?
That's correct. So we're saying, so our observation is the capability that's represented in that downstream connection opens the doors to becoming a different kind of company than just an energy provider. And I'd say that's a good illustration of an asymmetric attack.
So let's dig deeper then into what Jeff was saying and talk about manufacturing industry examples. What is enterprise services doing that helps clients stay ahead of or respond to those disruptions?
Yes. Well, when we set out to become more industry focused and industry relevant, which kind of started as a really new focus area 3 years ago, we were not starting to look to technology options first, but we were looking to market drivers and business drivers. So in addition to those Jeff mentioned, we were looking into the increased complexity of supply chains, of value chains. We were looking into, yes, of course, the consumer dictating our next moves, but also the risk, the truth, and the benefit in data and information management. And based on those drivers, we concluded that we needed a more integrated, modern style of manufacturing. And the way we've described this point of view as enterprise services is called connected manufacturing, which describes a totally interconnected ecosystem of a manufacturing world where all elements and components of that ecosystem are interconnected. And I'm not talking about technology and systems only, I'm talking about plants, I'm talking about products, product components, and I'm talking about people, workers, customers, and also consumers. And the way how we achieve this interconnectivity is by a convergence of technologies or of the known technology layers such as information technology, operations technology, and communications technology. A convergence that goes far beyond to the well-known point-to-point interfacing we have actually seen and done for 2-3 decades. It's more really everything is melting together, plus the establishment of new data sources via enhanced sensor technology and machine-to-machine integration and communication. So if you combine that with our ability to detect, proceed, and analyze a huge amount of data out of those multiple numerous sources, that truly brings the value to manufacturing companies in their ability to streamline their operations, which is more internal efficiency, or even, to grow the business faster, in faster response to market changes, because you can quickly switch on a new business model. You can even try. You can switch on new configuration options for your products using the same channel without major rebuild in your factory, and that keeps you nimble. Yeah. So with that, you can take more risk at a lower level of asset and dedicated investment, and ultimately it makes you more successful. And we have turned all that knowledge and experience into a standard roadmap, a recipe if you like, which clearly describes how you get started, where you get started. And we have found out a number of key imperatives in that work. Number one, you need to understand your baseline. Yeah? So it's all very sexy in the digital world, but you need to know where you are in your current maturity with your current landscape, because this actually defines your starting point. And the challenge is not to get a digital technology piece to work. The challenge is to get it to work in a seamlessly integrated and secure way with the existing landscape. And raise your hand if you don't have a single piece of legacy left in your environment, please. All right? So that's the challenge. But you know what? That's the challenge which is truly our market differentiator, because we have been operating heterogeneous environments for many, many decades. We know how to integrate legacy with state-of-the-art technology, with digital technology. And we know how to treat and manage an enterprise architecture along a multi-year roadmap of digital transformation. So when you set your priorities, then also consider to find the right balance between internally focused initiatives that are more driving efficiency, quality, driving costs down, versus external revenue-generating initiatives that are more customer-centric and market-centric. And I have two examples for those, I think, pretty successful one. So on the internal side, with Zeiss in Germany, we have been working on the establishment of an Industry 4.0 compliant lifecycle framework for their lens production in order to drive down failure ratio. And what we did there is simply we were just combining new data sources via sensors or out of machines with existing data sources like ERP and warehouses. And we put it all together in an HPE enhanced data analytics platform. And that enabled a real-time automated cycle of detect, analyze, and act and respond, so that we could almost create a self-healing production. Self-healing, and that translates into numbers like detection time went down by a factor of 10 to 10%. Resolution time of failures went down to 43%. So you can imagine the value that's been generated. An external example with Kaiser compressor systems, for instance, they were off for, what's our future business model? We cannot just keep selling our equipment plus maintenance contract plus tons of spare parts, right? So we were thinking about a way to actually create higher reliability and uptime via predictive maintenance. And we did this by enhanced data analytics of sensor data of the installed base compressor systems. And with that predictive maintenance, we achieved much higher uptime, lower spare part cost, and based on that higher maturity, Kaiser was able to totally change the business model from selling equipment plus service contracts to selling compressed air by unit.
Sukhi, if I can turn to you now, I mean, these, as a chief technologist, must be conversations you're having with your clients on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I mean, not only is digital about business transformation, as Jeff laid out, and not only is it about the industry, so understanding the industry vertical, but it's also about technology. So as a chief technology officer, I still have a job, right? So we tend to get requests from leaders and business leaders that push us hard, but those requests tend to come as a list of technologies. So recently we had a customer who came to our innovation center in Geneva, and they literally gave us a list of 8 technologies. In the context of a particular industry segment, they said, we'd like to know your point of view around 3D scanning, 3D printing, IoT. And I was scratching my head, a technologist. I was like, what's the business problem we're trying to solve? What is the real business problem? A couple of conversations with the client, they actually gave us a bit more information about their challenges as a consumer health company. So what we were able to do in Geneva is, as this customer arrived, we created a retail store in the Geneva Innovation Center.
This is fantastic. You have to hear this example. It's brilliant.
When they walked in, they actually thought they were in one of their stores. So they were quite shocked, first of all. Secondly, one of the technologies they were interested in was how can we understand better demographics of our customers? So we actually put a camera on one of the shelves that could guess your age and push you a voucher related to your age. So if you were like older like me, you wouldn't get sort of certain vouchers, but it was quite accurate in terms of guessing the age. And after the event, we actually showed the customer how accurate we were in guessing their ages. So the customer was actually in the room. What was quite interesting was all of the conversations started with technology, but they ended up in business conversations, which is, how would this actually enable our business? Would we really use an app to look at a store, or could we use NFC instead to touch a voucher? So it ended up in, how can we use this technology for business advantage? So while there's many of these technologies, the key challenges customers have is knowing how to navigate them. So, we've gone through the era of mainframe client server, internet. It was reasonably easy to sort of place some bets based on what was going on. Now it's too difficult. There are so many technologies, such a fusion of these. Customers are looking for help, and they're looking for help not for somebody who's selling them a product, but somebody who will navigate the technology in the context of their business language and get to the core nuggets of, these are the kind of projects you should do that will return the business KPIs. Here's the other thing. They don't want to do this in 6 months or 9 months. They want to do this in 6 days or 6 weeks. So there's a speed of execution for these kind of initiatives. So when we did this session with the customer, they said, can we have another meeting in 2 weeks where you can show us more in the context of our business? So they were expecting an evolution of the prototype. And it was hard enough to get that ready for the session with the client, but the expectation was it'll be better and free. You will show us more of what's the art of the possible. Our answer was quite simple. Yes, we'd love to work with you on an ongoing basis. So there's got to be a sort of culture on behavior on both sides to actually engage in these kind of projects. But these are really exciting sort of ideas.
So in terms of re-envisioning your company, as it were, even big businesses have to start thinking like startups.
They do. I mean, the startup mentality, though, can't just be we're going to work fast or we're going to do product innovation. It has to think truly like a startup. Startups are trying to disrupt your business. So I'll give you another example from this particular consumer health company. They have a product where if you scan your foot, they will select the right insole. So with our partners from HP Inc., we actually showed them a new scanner. It's like a fish tank. You put your foot in it, and it scans the bottom of your foot, the side of your foot, and it actually creates a much more accurate 3D image so you can better select the insole. So we showed this to the customer, and they said, we'll get our engineers to talk to each other. And I said, yeah, we could do that, but don't we want to have a business conversation about what you might be able to do with 3D scanned foot images? Couldn't you actually start a digital business selling this to REI, Recreation Equipment International, I think they're called, or Nike, where 3D images of the feet could actually generate more personalized footwear? Now, their starting position was, that's not our business. Until we told them that there were customers already doing this that would disrupt their insole business. Then all of a sudden they got very panicky and wanted to sort of work on a project.
I'm not surprised. When people start losing business, that's when they sit up and take notice.
So I wanted to round that to Jeff's point. It was the threat of losing their business that drove them to want to investigate a digital platform for 3D scanning of feet, not protecting their insole business from, the traditional sort of product disruption. It's truly that sort of shift that will force them to do this.
Jeff, you've been nodding. Just one final word on what Sukhi's had to say.
Well, I think it's great evidence of the asymmetric competition truth. I guess the other thing that it reminds me of is there are, back to your question about the people that get it, and I guess one thing that I like to say is there are three kinds of people. There are people who make things happen, there are people who let things happen, and there are people who ask, what just happened? And what we see in the profile, certainly the example Sukhi gave, are people that move from the let it happen, bordering on what just happened, to suddenly understanding they had to make something happen. We think that is the actionability factor here. And again, it doesn't have to be over-engineered in terms of understanding the broad strokes of what the potential is. But it also needs to reflect the other statement that Sukhi made, a very important point here. Speed to execution at scale becomes the real differentiator in how you do something with this. Way too many companies are doing science projects where they give a limited budget and a few people to do something and expect magic to happen. That's sort of the superficial understanding of what a venture mentality is about. You have to have an ability to commercialize and deploy into the big business to really see the value we're talking about. And that commercialization step is often where most internal shops run out of gas. They just don't have the resources to do it. That's where partners like us become the bridge to get it from the great idea to successful implementation and real value created.
The three main points we got there is that the customer is in charge, you need to be asset light, and of course you all need to look out for that asymmetric competition. My thanks to Jeff Smith, Martin Reiner and Sukhi Gill for joining us this afternoon at the centre. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks, guys.